What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. Today's patch that just went live has got to be the most overcooked patch they've ever put through. I'm gonna start calling this now cosmetic-based balancing. With the Transformer skin bundle coming out and the Mythic Reinhardt weapon that talks to you, it seems like quite the convenient time for them to overtune tanks. Summer Games also launches today for Lucio Ball. They're adding a new change called Player Surveys that after a match is done, you may occasionally be invited to participate in a web-based survey that you can complete on PC or on your mobile device by scanning a QR code. So now you can really let Blizzard know how you actually feel. One quality of life fix, audio updates. They've adjusted the volume levels for health pool impacts. When shooting enemies with base health, shields, armor, or overhealth, there's sound cues that are clearer to what type of health you are damaging. Okay, first actual balance patch note. Armor's flat damage reduction has increased from 5 to 10 per projectile. All armor for all armor heroes now is twice as good. Well, interestingly, it probably doesn't change the burst damage that was already pretty decent against armor before, but it makes armor way better against the spread damage it was already good against, especially those medium tier spread damage characters like maybe Hog had enough damage to actually cut through armor a bit if you landed all your shots. Now with the new armor, new and improved, you'll be even more resistant, essentially invincible against spread damage, which affects a lot of damage characters, but also tank v tank matchups. Skipping ahead a little bit, I also want to note that the damage roll passive is also getting nerfed specifically against tank heroes. So healing reduction from the damage passive will only be 10%. This means breaking through that armor at all is harder on two fronts. That on top of that, they buffed the tank roll passive, where the ultimate generation reduction has increased from 30 to 40%, but they revert the knockback resistance back down to 40%. So tank-wide change, you'll deal less damage to the tanks and get less ult from them. And considering how much you shoot the tank anyway, that's almost like nerfing all ult gen across the board globally, or the next thing closest to it, which goes for both damage and healing. That is a change I see some promise to. Because of the way a lot of the neutral fights have worked out, you kind of need to engage on your ultimates, and I at least personally prefer when there's more neutral fight to be had with a meaningful impact. Though I don't think that's going to happen for tank v tank gameplay due to the very obvious and apparent power creeping that's going on. Okay, getting on to all the individual tank changes. They all got changed. First up, D.Va Defense Matrix maximum duration increased from 3 to 3.5 seconds, and Micro Missiles explosion damage goes up from 4 to 5.5, dealing a total of now 153 if you hit all of them direct. Try to keep in mind as we go through this, all of the tanks are getting buffed at the same time. So in some ways, in theory, they're going to level out from what you remember them tank v tank, but in general, tanks will be stronger against everything else. And as D.Va only has a handful of good tank matchups for her, she's one for sure that will be even more oppressive against squishy characters in this new and improved version. Doomfist passive, the best defense is a good offense. Overhealth gained per target has increased from 35 to 40, and the delay before overhealth begins to drain increased from 1 to 3 seconds. So you'll get a little bit more shields and have time to maintain them while you get your cooldowns back. And since Doomfist's abilities are an AoE, that's 5 extra overhealth per target that you hit. That starts to add up to the cap quite quickly. Junker Queen's commanding shout overhealth gained is increased from 150 to 175. More tanky, more numbers, more higher. And Queen's passive Adrenaline Rush wound damage self-healing multiplier has been increased yet again from 2 to 2.5. Mauga's Cardiac Overdrive, the duration's gonna go down to just 3 seconds, but the lifesteal goes from 60 to 100%. The damage reduction goes to 40%, but allies receive half of the lifesteal and damage reduction effect. So it's actually a nerf in both those respects, as well as the duration nerf going down. I think this probably helps average tier Mauga players better, who struggle to find good team fight syncing the way higher tier players may all commit together, making better use of the shout. This balances it so you can think to use it yourself a bit more, and will make you more effective once you lock in on the targets you're good at fighting, like a Bastion or a tank. But with it being 3 seconds, I think it's probably a net benefit to the other tank, as most tanks, when Mauga wants to shout, usually use their defense ability to cancel it or get away, and weren't really trying to fight him while he was shouting anyway. So probably good for the overall tank v tank matchup, Mauga versus other tanks, combined with another improvement where Overrun's knockback damage has increased from 25 to 30 and the stomp damage goes from 60 to 75, incentivizing you to get picks with Mauga playing aggressively somewhat, and as long as you hit your shots alone, you'll be able to lifesteal, although in a smaller time window. This is probably one of the better changes, but also keep in mind Mauga is affected by that new armor, as his weapons will be even more useless up against them. When I asked top 500 players, they would say that Mauga would counter Reinhardt still, even after the previous patch, but when I see gameplay from lower rank players or at my rank, that's not the way I typically would see it play out, which is more to do with how the entire team would have played around Mauga at a higher tier, whereas outside of that rank, I feel the tankier tank tended to win just based on the stats and execution being easier. Now that will be even more severe as they forced that result with the balancing, so that it probably will happen at both tiers now. Orisa's Fortify duration goes up from 3.5 to 4 seconds, which is a buff to her sustain, but keep in mind that you move slower with Fortify now, so if you continue to channel it, you'll be stuck in the mud even longer. Ramattra Nemesis form bonus armor goes up from 225 to 300, getting more health overall and the benefit of those armor buffs, and Pummel's damage has increased from 60 to 65, which is an important breakpoint because 4 punches before used to net you at 240 damage, whereas 4 now will be 260, making 4 a very important breakpoint. Reinhardt's barrier field goes up. The maximum health has increased from 1400 to 1600, and the barrier regeneration rate goes up as well from 140 to 160. We've seen these values before in yesteryear of Overwatch, and with this number going high enough, it can make it difficult to play other tanks against a Rein without executing rather flawlessly. As especially since there's a lot of low ground brawly type maps where you can send the shield to the objective and get a lot of value. I mean, in my opinion, Rein was already a decent one of the rotation good characters with a handful of good matchups, but keep in mind that several of the global changes to tank are kind of geared towards Rein's preferred playstyle. He relies on his armor health and he relies on getting healed a lot. Other tanks don't necessarily, so he's disproportionately benefiting from the global changes. Then on top of that, another buff, when Rein connects a charge and impacts you into a wall, the damage goes back up to 300. You'd have to consider Roadhog a loser in this patch, but they give Pigpen a buff. The area damage after activating goes up from 35 to 45 per second, and the recovery time is reduced from 0.55 to 0.4 seconds, meaning you can shoot more quickly after using it, and the cooldown now begins immediately when used instead of after a short delay. So it comes up a little faster, does a little more damage, which I think you were mostly killing squishies with it anyway. If you landed the full combo, I assume they did this in order to compensate for the extra tankiness when Hog is trying to target the enemy tank, which will be much harder now against the new armor values. Sigma's Accretion Rock has its impact damage increased from 40 to 80, which means it will do 120 total damage, making for his combo with Hyperspheres much more lethal. Winston's Primal Rage max health has increased. He'll now get an additional 200, and Tesla Cannon's secondary fire charge time has been reduced from 1 second to 0.85. Wrecking Ball's adaptive shield allied overhealth transfer ratio increased by 50%, where you can use up to 50 overhealth per target to grant allies up to 75 HP. And Quad Cannon's automatic reload time when transformed has been reduced from 2 to 1.6 seconds, allowing you to shoot again when rolling faster. If you remember in year 1 of Overwatch 2, Zarya had her bubbles at a very interesting value that they're seemingly returning to. Both Zarya's bubbles, the projected and self barrier, will go up to 225 health, and the duration on them will last from 2 to 2.5 seconds, which doesn't just add an extra layer of tankiness to her and the team, but also more likely means that she'll be gaining more charge on accident because players are going to have to get used to the bubbles taking longer to time out, and they'll just take up more space in the way as the projectiles are flying around. That's it for all the tank changes. If Season 11 was supposed to be Super Mega Ultra Watch, I think a better name would have been Super Mega Power Creep. Because holy moly, are they just making all of the stats higher on everything? I'm not so sure what their desired effect on these things are, other than just making tanking heroes more forgiving, which already was a major problem in top players' hands, as the way the team fights would resolve is for tank players to just hold good positions almost indefinitely. Now that will just get worse at higher tiers of play, and the major problem the average player was concerned about is when their tank teammate or their tank themselves is getting counterpicked by the enemy. And the more severe they make each individual character, I actually think the harsher they make that. However, perhaps in this new version, more popular tanks like Reinhardt will be the beneficiary of that trade, but maybe not for the right reasons. Onto the damage category now. The new damage roll passive will be half effective against tank heroes, only 10% healing reduction, which I think oddly enough, because so many supports have so many self-heals and escapes, I almost somewhat feel like I'd prefer it to be even higher against them. But that's just one man's opinion. Bob now gains the tank roll passive ability, which means he takes less damage to the head and can't be knocked back as far. Cassidy gets a nerf. He has been one of the top performing DPS for quite a while now, and while the flashbang version of his hindered nade is much healthier overall because you can actually have a spacing battle against it, he still was one of the more consistent over-kitted characters with a lot of options, flexibility, and potency, everything a good over-tuned character in Overwatch needs. But now he's going to have his range reined in yet again, where the primary fire fall-off range has been rescaled from 25 to 35 down significantly to 20 to 30, losing 5 meters on both ends. This means you'll probably be able to pull out that Ashe Mythic skin a little bit more reliably because medium range characters will start to exercise a bigger ranged advantage against him. But overall, the game since Season 9 has gone closer range more broadly, and that's Cassidy's wheelhouse. So certainly at the very least on those maps where they're still in his effective range, he'll be just as good as he was before. Pharah, which is possibly one of the most slept on overpower crept characters that a lot of the community took time to realize how good she was, finally now is getting reined in. The concussive blast explosion damage has gone from 30 damage in that big AoE down to 0. But they compensate for it by increasing the knockback radius from 6 to 8 meters, and the knockback overall is increased by 11%. I don't think they need the compensation changes personally. For me, Pharah was like the flex projectile version of Sojourn in her overkitted state, with very flexible mobility options, burst damage, and an AoE with a status effect, as well as damage. Pharah, just like Sojourn, had to be really reined in from the long list of positive attributes. I think Pharah will still be good after these changes, will be a bit more annoying on a lot of the boop maps that she used to be strong on before. Control especially has a lot of ring outs that you can go for with much more reliability now. So while she loses the conk blast combo of 2 hits and a conk blast around a corner to finish you off, she's even better on certain maps that allow for knocks off the map. Not sure how I feel about that. I love Pharah, and the rework just made her more fun to play, but certainly overkitted and overtuned. And as players have started to learn the new movement set, I think she's even more oppressive than she was in the Skybox version, because her options for aggression are even better. Onto the support cast now. Ana's Sleep Dart is nerfed against tank heroes. It was 3.5 seconds, now just 3. Illari's Healing Pylon, allies no longer see the destroyed UI when the Healing Pylon breaks, just because the devs say they think it would be distracting. Okay. And Zenyatta's Transcendence ultimate cost has decreased by 10%. All right, that is a patch note on the patch note list. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below of today's crazy patch. Replays were bugged out and I couldn't get them to load on the last version. So we're going to put a new Google Form submission for you guys to send in replay codes for review in upcoming content. This can kind of be for whatever reason you want me to see anything. Whatever you want to share with me for whatever reason, whether it be a VOD review, examples of the game design that you think suck, strategies you're struggling to deal with, or new broken stuff you find in this patch, which there's gonna be plenty of. You can click the link in the description and send in your replay codes to the Google form. Be sure to add your battle tag and we'll start making transformative content coming up very soon. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like and don't forget to click subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.